A new police chief strolled into his station undercover, determined to observe his team without any pretense. But when a Caucasian officer sneered and spat in his face, assuming he was insignificant, everyone was about to witness a startling twist that would leave them all stunned. It was a humid Tuesday morning in August when Marcus Webb, recently named chief, stepped from his car in the center of Riverview, a modest town nestled among the gentle hills of North Carolina. Dressed casually in a checked shirt, faded jeans, and worn-out sneakers, he didn't exactly look like someone who had spent 20 years rising through the ranks of law enforcement. That was his plan. Marcus trusted in seeing things as they actually were, not through the filtered view of routine meetings or scripted greetings. As an African-American man assuming a leadership position in a department long haunted by rumors of wrongdoing, he aimed to inspect the unit without any distractions. And what better method than to blend right in? In the busy parking lot, officers came and went, chatting and laughing, while Marcus surveyed the scene and noted the light banter and occasional curious looks. No one recognized him, a fact hardly surprising, given that news of his appointment had only just circulated, and he had purposely held off on making his entrance public until the scheduled evaluation later that morning. Adjusting the brim of his cap, he inhaled deeply, feeling the heavy burden of his mission to eliminate the festering negativity within the force. He was familiar with resistance, yet he understood that this role would challenge him in ways he had not yet foreseen. Drawing nearer to the building, faint laughter floated in the air. Marcus slipped in through a side door of the station, unnoticed amid the low hum of conversations and the ringing of telephones. The polished tile floors shimmered under bright lights, and the lingering aroma of stale coffee permeated the corridors. He strolled slowly, absorbing the interactions around him. Clusters of officers gathered at desks, some swapping stories while others pored over reports. It wasn't until he paused by the break room that someone called out sharply, "Hey, you!" Turning, Marcus saw a white officer striding over with a self-satisfied grin and a badge that read, "Officer Bennett." A few colleagues leaned casually against the wall, watching with interest. Marcus was about to speak, but Bennett cut him off abruptly. "Lost, huh? This isn't a refuge," he said with a tone dripping with superiority, adding, "You better take that mess somewhere else." Marcus froze, the words hitting him like a blow. Unsure whether to correct this behavior immediately or let events unfold, he hesitated. Before he could decide further, Bennett stepped closer and raised his voice. "So everyone could hear, haven't you heard? Get out of here. We don't need folks like you lingering around." The surrounding group burst into laughter while Marcus clenched his jaw, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to retort, but Bennett leaned in even closer, only inches apart, until, without any warning, the officer spat directly in Marcus's face. Time appeared to freeze. Marcus's breath caught as the warm saliva dripped along his cheek while the laughter around him intensified. One officer banged a table in amusement, and another mumbled about setting the riffraff in their place. Despite his racing thoughts and thumping pulse, Marcus maintained a composed exterior. Slowly, he retrieved a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his face deliberately. "Is this how you treat everyone who crosses these doors?" he calmly questioned, his voice steady yet firm. Officer Bennett only smirked in reply. "Only those who do not belong here." The laughter erupted once again, but Marcus remained silent and turned away, heading down the hallway and leaving the group behind. Advancing toward the main office, an intercom crackled and summoned all personnel to the meeting room. Inside, the room buzzed with chatter as officers filed in, some cradling coffee cups, others chuckling over private jokes. Marcus entered through a side entrance, a folder embossed with the official seal of the department clutched in his hand. Standing just out of immediate sight, he watched as the room filled with well-known faces, some still giggling about what had occurred earlier. Near the front, Captain Walker, a burly man with a graying moustache, called for attention. "All right, everyone quiet down. We have an important introduction this morning." The chatter subsided, their curiosity piqued. Officer Bennett leaned casually against a wall, arms folded, and a smug look unmistakably evident, clearly enjoying his moment. Clearing his throat, Captain Walker announced, "As many of you already know, the previous chief retired last month. We have all been waiting for the arrival of his successor, and I am proud to present our new leader, a man with an excellent record and a clear vision for our future." Marcus then stepped forward, each measured step commanding silence. The room immediately quieted as he made his way to the podium. Placing his folder on the desk, he slowly looked over the assembly, his calm presence intensifying the atmosphere. Bennett's smirk faltered, and the color drained from his face as recognition slowly set in. Nervous glances passed among the officers. Some whispered, while others stared at Marcus in disbelief. "Good morning. I am Marcus Webb, and effective this very day, I am your new chief of police," he stated evenly. The hush that fell was profound. Bennett's face flushed deep red as his earlier bravado evaporated. Marcus's steady eyes locked on him for a prolonged moment before sweeping over the rest of the room. "When I arrived today, I chose to wear plain clothes so I could see the department as it truly is. What I witnessed this morning was nothing short of eye-opening. In the brief time I have been here, I have already encountered behavior that is not merely unprofessional, but utterly unacceptable. Allow me to be perfectly clear. The toxic atmosphere that has been tolerated in this department ends now." The silence that followed was heavy, with every word sinking in. Bennett shifted uneasily, his eyes fixed on the floor. Marcus stepped closer to the front, his tone both sharp and controlled. "Respect is not a luxury. It is the very foundation of our work in law enforcement. Without respect, we let down not only one another, but also the community that depends on us." He paused as the silence deepened, watching the discomfort ripple through the room. "This morning, some of you laughed, dismissing what you thought was just another weak man being put in check. But let me remind you all, everyone who enters these doors deserves respect, regardless of whether they carry a badge." His words sliced through the air, leaving no room for dissent. Marcus maintained his steady gaze, the tension in the room mounting as each officer felt the full force of his declaration. Bennett shifted again, beads of perspiration appearing on his forehead, yet Marcus continued without pause. "I realize that change can be challenging," Marcus said, his tone firm and clear. "But let me be unequivocal. There will be zero tolerance for any behavior that undermines the dignity of any person, be it a co-worker, a civilian, or anyone else." He stepped away from the podium and slowly approached the cluster of officers, his presence both assertive and measured. "Officer Bennett," Marcus said, stopping just a few feet from the man, who visibly recoiled as his earlier swagger completely vanished. "You embody everything that is wrong with this department. When you spat in my face, you didn't just insult me. You disrespected the badge, the oath, and the very community we vowed to protect." Bennett stammered, "Chief, I wasn't aware." "That is exactly the problem," Marcus interrupted sharply. "You never took the time to understand. You acted on the assumption that the person before you was insignificant, and that assumption is why the people have lost trust in this department." An oppressive silence filled the room as every officer stood frozen in disbelief. Marcus then addressed the rest of the group. "What I witnessed was not merely one individual's error, it was a systemic problem, a culture where intimidation and bias have been not only accepted, but even celebrated. That ends today." Taking a step back toward the podium, his voice rising slightly, Marcus continued, "I have spent my entire career fighting for justice, not only on the streets, but also behind the scenes in organizations like this. I understand that change is neither simple nor immediate, but I guarantee that as long as I am chief, this station will operate with honesty, dignity, and responsibility." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to register, then nodded slightly toward Captain Walker before declaring, "Effective immediately, Officer Bennett is suspended, pending a thorough internal review. And for those who might think this is merely a light reprimand, think again. This is just the beginning of a series of sweeping reforms." A collective gasp swept through the room as Bennett's face turned a deep shade of red and his jaw set tightly, avoiding the stares of his peers. Marcus, however, stood resolute. "This is not about penalizing someone," he said firmly. "It is about establishing a new standard. If you are not prepared to meet that standard, then this is not the place for you." His eyes swept the room one last time as he added, "If you are willing to improve, to strive for better, we will move forward together. But I want you to know that I will hold every one of you accountable at every step." The meeting concluded in a weighted silence, with officers leaving the room without their usual banter. Marcus lingered at the podium, observing silently as Bennett stormed out, his expression a mix of humiliation and anger. Around him, the other officers avoided eye contact, their faces reflecting everything from remorse to introspection. Later, alone in his office, Marcus settled at his desk and exhaled deeply, aware that this was merely the start. Years of deeply embedded mindsets would not simply vanish overnight, and for some, they might never change. Yet he had not been sent to Riverview to win popularity contests. He was there to make a real difference. The telephone on his desk rang, and it was Captain Walker on the line. "Chief, I wanted to tell you that you handled that situation far better than most would have," Walker said hesitantly. "Thank you, Captain," Marcus replied, "but the real work is just beginning. I need you to compile a complete review of Bennett's record, every complaint, every incident report, everything, by tomorrow." After a brief pause, Walker added, "Chief, I think you managed to shake up a few of them in a positive way today." Marcus ended the call, giving himself a brief moment of satisfaction before diving into the mountain of documents spread before him. In the ensuing weeks, the station transformed noticeably. Officers who had once laughed at Bennett's antics now steered clear of him, while whispers of his suspension spread throughout the ranks. Marcus made a habit of walking the halls frequently, greeting everyone with a nod, a constant reminder of his new leadership style. Some officers genuinely embraced the change. One day, Officer Ramirez, a young and eager recruit, approached Marcus and confessed that she had once participated in the toxic culture out of fear. "I really want to improve, Chief," she said sincerely. "That's all I ask," Marcus replied kindly yet firmly. "It all starts with you." However, not everyone was ready to change. Bennett filed an appeal against his suspension, alleging unfair treatment. Marcus stood his ground, firmly believing that accountability was non-negotiable. The department's investigation revealed a long list of complaints against Bennett, ranging from excessive use of force to inappropriate remarks. His appeal was rejected, and Marcus made it unequivocally clear that the era of ignoring misconduct was over. Despite the positive shifts, Marcus knew the journey ahead would be long and challenging. Discussions about hidden bias and community engagement met with varied responses, yet he remained determined. Every small success, a recruit speaking up, an officer rethinking their habits, was a step towards a better future. One morning, while attending a community event, Marcus encountered a young boy who timidly approached him. "Are you truly the chief?" the boy inquired, his eyes shining with wonder. "Yes, I am," Marcus replied with a warm smile. My dad says that the police don't care about us, the boy whispered almost inaudibly. Stooping down to meet his gaze, Marcus said, I can't undo the past, but I promise you that we are committed to doing better, and if you ever need help, just come find me, okay? The boy nodded, a small smile spreading across his face, a moment that reminded Marcus why he had accepted this tough job. By the time his first year ended, the station was far from flawless, but it was undoubtedly on a different path. Officers unable to adapt were let go, replaced by fresh faces who believed in Marcus's vision of a respectful and just department. The once cynical community began to recognize real efforts to rebuild trust and bridge divides. One evening, as Marcus stood in the main hall watching officers leave after their shifts, he noticed that the camaraderie now felt sincere, not at someone else's expense, but genuine and inclusive. Although challenges would always be present, for the first time he felt a sense of hope. Change is rarely simple, but it is always worth fighting for.